To be honest, I really didn't want to watch season 2, but people kept asking me to watch it. And frankly, I was just curious to see how much of a train wreck it would become because the first season was awful. I remember hating the first season. I didn't get why anybody liked it. I guess the production values are pretty high, but like everything else about it I thought was bad. The characters were bad. I don't think the voice acting's particularly good. I don't really like the animation style, to be honest. I hated most of it, and I didn't really want to watch season 2. But here I am. So season 2 makes season 1 look better by comparison. I've watched about half of it so far. It was kind of funny because I started watching it and I was kind of worried. I'm like, well, maybe I was too hard on this show. Maybe season 2 is going to be a lot better. Maybe they kind of learned from their mistakes. The story's going to pick up. The first like 20 minutes of episode 1, I just laughed through. I laughed hysterically through. This show is so just like anti-European, anti-Christian. It's amazing. It's like this is Netflix on steroids. They aren't even pretending anymore. So it starts off with so Dracula in this version of Castlevania is not actually Satan. Is not actually the devil. He is a man of science whose human waifu tried to show him the beauty of the world, but she got burned at the stake by the evil church. And so Dracula decided to go crazy because he tried to give humans science. So they didn't want science. They wanted their superstition. So this starts off with how his wife got caught by the church. So she was a doctor and she like had some woman in the village over at her house and she gives her, and I kid you not, penicillin. She's like, "Oh, this mold will cure out your infection." I'm like, "It's science." Like, what does that even mean? It's science. Science isn't really a noun, is it? I always thought of science as being like a process, like the scientific method. But I guess she just uses like science or whatever, and it cured the woman's illness. But yeah, apparently Dracula had access to penicillin, and he had access to like modern medical theory, and they have like centrifuges that are powered by electricity and all this other stuff. And Dracula had all of this in like the 15th century or whenever this takes, maybe 16th. I don't remember when it takes place. It doesn't matter. It's before electric motors were invented. And apparently all this stuff existed before. It's ancient knowledge. The ancient Greeks knew about penicillin and the church destroyed all of it. And there's like, so she gives her it, so then the woman rats on her. So then the Inquisition comes. And I don't really get why there's a Catholic Inquisition in Wallachia. I thought Wallachia, being like part of Romania, was majority Eastern Orthodox. In fact, I think it is like majority. Now, in the Castlevania games, my understanding is the church is reunified, or there was just no schism, or the Japanese just don't really understand the difference, so the church is just the church. But there wouldn't be a Catholic Inquisition, I don't think, in Wallachia, because it's like 90% of Orthodox. Now, Dracula himself was Catholic because he converted to try to get more support from Rome, but that's not part of this story. So the church comes and they like find all her medicine. They're like, "This is magic and witchcraft. Books are evil." And then she's like, "Yeah, but no, this is ancient knowledge." And he's like, "Pagan knowledge." And I'm like, "This is like the Renaissance, isn't it?" I thought they were like rediscovering this stuff. And I think people knew what science was. Maybe it wasn't quite like how it was today, but there was an understanding of it. So like it's just there to bash the Christianity. That's literally all it's there for. It's so lame and it's so transparent. It's literally Dracula. If we had have listened to Dracula, he would have given us penicillin in the 15th century or whatever the hell this takes place in. Like it's a joke. So she gets kidnapped and the church burns everything, and then they burn her at the stake as a witch for using medicine. And because at one point she says, God is not involved with this. No God is involved with this medication. And that's used as the grounds to burn her. And that's like, this literally goes on for like 20 minutes to like half of the first episode. This is what they want to lead with. Um, this I don't know. It's just a slur. Like it's not funny. It's not interesting. It's not social commentary. It's just them like doing a polemic, and there's nothing wrong with doing a polemic. Like my book, No Chance, is a polemic. I'm 100%. It's not meant to be fair, and it's not meant to be charitable or anything. But don't do that, and then pretend it's just a normal show. I wish the creators of the show would just, well, I don't know if they've said, but I wish they would just label this like the Catholic Church sucks or Christianity sucks featuring vampires. It's not an adaptation of Castlevania. It's the people who made this show wanted to put forward a certain political agenda that wasn't reflected at all in the original game series. I'm not even going to get into the lore because people got angry at me the last time I did, but it doesn't reflect the actual lore of the game series. They actually changed a lot of stuff to make it more anti-Christian. So that later in it, we get like something even more cartoonish. So Dracula has these two sidekicks. So Dracula has two human servants who are the generals of his army, one of whom he's lied to and says that he only wants to cull humanity and then keep the remainder controlled. The other one wants to exterminate all of humanity, Isaac, and he has literally like an SJW wet dream background. Okay, so he was an African slave who was owned by a crusader. I'm not joking. He was literally owned by a crusader. And the crusader used to like beat the shit out of him over minor things. And it's like he found him one day messing around with his books, and he started whipping him, and he's like, I was reading the books. I wanted to learn how to read so I could help you in your work because I love you. And then you think like, oh, maybe this is gonna be a touching moment, and then the Crusader guy just starts beating the shit out of him more. It's like, I'm beating you because I love you too, because this is what God's love is like. So it's like they've gone beyond just the like anti-Christian. Now it's just anti-European, because Europeans and the European colonialism is so evil. It made him go and join Dracula in his attempt to exterminate the entirety of the human race. Like, and it's such a cringy scene. It's so cringy. It goes on so long, and like Dracula's just so self-righteous, and I just feel like the show is siding with him like 100%. They're like, oh, he's completely legitimate reaction that his wife married a literal demon, like an archdemon. Okay, his wife married the king of vampires, which are a race of former humans empowered by satanic magic that exist by consuming life. And she married him, and people weren't really on board with that, and they thought it was like maybe not a good thing, and they punished her for that. And because of that, it's logical for him to want to exterminate the entirety of the world. And I feel it tries really, really hard to make Dracula look sympathetic, to make it look like. And it just kind of irritates me because in the Castlevania games, Dracula, generally speaking, is a force of nature. He's the ultimate evil. He's not really supposed to be sympathetic. He's just kind of the he's a bit like Ganondorf. He's just the consistent evil who keeps coming back time and time again to be defeated by the forces of good. If memory serves, in Lament of Innocence, it's kind of established he became Dracula just out of spite, out of hatred of God, out of jealousy for his best friend, and just a desire to destroy and corrupt the world. His motivation is evil. There's nothing wrong with a villain's motivation being evil. There's nothing wrong with them being sadistic or cruel or wicked. You just have to do it properly. And I think, generally speaking, the games did it properly, where Dracula didn't really need a motivation beyond wanting to take over the world. Because it makes sense for him, because he's like an all-powerful vampire king, and he actually could rule the world. But we couldn't do that. We just had to attack Christianity in Europe in general. And if only we had a listen, Dracula would have given us penicillin.